They left me on the floor, surrounded by shattered plastic and even more shattered trust. My name is Claire, and at 26 years old I thought my family had finally broken me. But then my eyes caught a tiny, blinking red light on my desk. My webcam had recorded everything. The shove, the threats, the violence. My family didn't just assault me. They created the very evidence I would use to dismantle their lives, piece by painstaking piece. They thought my deafness made me powerless. They were about to learn I see everything. Before I share my story, tell me where you're from in the comments. Hit the like and follow button if you've ever had to rise above what your family thought of you. Believe me, you'll want to hear what happens next. I sat at the polished mahogany table, the clink of silverware and crystal glasses filling the air like a rehearsed symphony. Sunday brunch at our Brookline estate was a ritual, a performance where every smile was choreographed, every word weighed for its social currency. My family, Richard, Eleanor, and Leo, sat across from me, their faces glowing with the kind of polish only money and denial can buy. I watched their lips move, piecing together their conversation through the blur of my deafness. I've been lip-reading since I was 8, when a fever stole my hearing and left me in a world of silence. I'm good at it. Too good, maybe. I catch the things people don't mean Mussolini say, the flickers of disdain or pity they think I miss. Today, though, I felt the weight of their eyes more than usual. Leo was mid-story, his hands waving as he spun some tale about his frat house exploits. His blonde hair caught the chandelier's light, making him look like the golden boy he believed he was. My parents hung on his every word, Eleanor's laugh too sharp, Richard's nod too eager. I sipped my orange juice, the glass cold against my fingers, and tried to blend into the wallpaper. I'm the black sheep, the one who doesn't fit the Abernathy mold. Too quiet, too studious, too different. Claire, darling, Eleanor's voice cut through my thoughts, her lips forming the words with exaggerated care, like I was a child. We have something for you. She slid a velvet box across the table, its crimson bow gleaming. My heart stuttered. Gifts from them were rare, and usually came with strings. I opened it, my fingers trembling, and found a pair of hearing aids nestled inside. They were sleek, but something about them looked off. Cheap almost, despite the fancy packaging. We're so proud of your progress at school, Richard said, his mustache twitching as he smiled. These are to celebrate. Top of the line, Claire. No expense spared. His words were warm, but his eyes were cold, like he was daring me to question him. I forced a smile, my throat tight. Thank you, I said, my voice raspy from disuse. I hadn't worn hearing aids in years, not since I was a teenager, and realized they couldn't bridge the gap between me and the world my family wanted me to inhabit. They'd never offered to replace the ones I outgrew, so why now? Eleanor's next words answered that question, sharp as a slap. Now there's no excuse for you to be in your own little world, dear, she said, her smile all teeth. You can be part of us again. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, Leo smirked, his eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite name. I clutched the box, my nails digging into the velvet. This wasn't a gift, it was a leash, a way to pull me back into their script. I excused myself, my legs heavy as I climbed the stairs to my room. Alone, I studied the hearing aids under my desk lamp. They were flimsy, the plastic edges rough. I slipped them on, wincing at the tinny static that buzzed in my ears. They were useless, a mockery of the technology I studied every day in my biomedical engineering lab. My chest ached, not with gratitude, but with the sinking realization that even their kindness was a lie. 3 weeks later, I was in my home office, surrounded by stacks of research papers and the soft glow of my laptop. My thesis on neural interface technology was consuming me, each equation a step toward a world where people like me could connect without barriers. The hearing aids from my parents sat in a drawer, untouched after that first disappointing try. I didn't need them, not yet, not until I could afford something better. The door slammed open, and I felt the vibration through the floor before I saw Leo's face, twisted with rage. His mouth moved too fast, a blur of fury I couldn't catch. I stood, signing, "Slow down, what's wrong?" He didn't slow down, he never did. His hands gestured wildly, pointing at me, then at his phone. I caught fragments. Essay, legacy, you weren't there. My stomach sank. He'd been hounding me for weeks to help with his Ivy League admissions essay, the one that was supposed to secure his spot as the Abernathy heir. I'd been too buried in my work, too lost in my silent world, to answer his calls. "Leo, I'm sorry," I started, but he lunged forward, snatching my laptop off the desk. The screen flickered as he held it hostage, his lips curling into a sneer. "You're always too busy, Claire. Too good for us," he shouted, the words clear enough to hurt. I reached for the laptop, my heart pounding, but he shoved it onto a shelf, out of reach. The air shifted as Richard and Eleanor appeared in the doorway. I looked to them, hoping for rescue, but Eleanor's face was a mask of disappointment. "He needs you, Claire," she said, her voice dripping with accusation. "Must you always be so difficult?" I froze, my breath catching. Richard's face darkened, his eyes narrowing as he stepped toward me. "We've spent a fortune on you," he roared, his words vibrating through the floorboards. "And this is how you repay us?" Before Engstrom could react, his hand shot out, grabbing the hearing aids I'd reluctantly put on that morning to test again. He yanked them from my ears, the plastic scraping my skin. Pain flared, but it was nothing compared to the shock as he threw them to the floor and stomped down, hard. The crack was silent to me, but I felt it, a sharp, ugly jolt through the wood under my feet. They stood there, all three of them staring down at me. Leo's smirk was back, Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line, Richard's chest heaving with righteous anger. They didn't see me as their daughter, their sister. They saw a problem, a flaw in their perfect facade. They turned and left, their footsteps fading into the silence that swallowed me whole. I sank to the floor, my hands shaking as I gathered the shattered pieces of the aids. The world was quieter now, heavier, and I was alone in it. The silence was suffocating, a weight that pressed against my chest as I sat on the floor, the broken hearing aids cradled in my hands. My ears stung where the plastic had torn skin, but the real pain was deeper, a bruise on my soul. I'd always known I didn't belong, but this was betrayal carved into my bones. My family hadn't just rejected me, they'd destroyed the one tool I'd been given to bridge my world to theirs. I wanted to scream, to cry, but the silence held me captive. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time blurred in the dim light of my office. My eyes fell on the webcam perched on my desk, its tiny red light blinking. I'd left it running to record myself practicing my thesis presentation, a habit to perfect my lip-reading feedback. My heart thudded as I dragged myself to the laptop, still perched precariously on the shelf where Leo had tossed it. I opened the footage, my hands trembling as the screen lit up with the scene from earlier. There I was, pleading with Leo, my face pale. There was Richard, his face contorted as he ripped the aids from my ears. The footage was grainy, but the cruelty was crystal clear. I watched it again, then again, not in horror but with a strange, cold clarity. Richard's words echoed in my mind. "A fortune on you." A fortune? Those aids were junk, barely worth $100. Something was wrong, a puzzle piece that didn't fit. I wiped my eyes, my despair hardening into resolve. I wasn't going to crumble, not this time. I dove into the family's shared server, my fingers flying over the keyboard. Years of sneaking around their digital locks to access my own files had made me good at this. I found bank statements, loan documents, and then, buried in a folder marked medical, an insurance claim from 7 years ago. My breath caught. It was for a $15,000 pair of hearing aids, top of the line, supposedly purchased for me when I was 18. I'd never seen them, never even heard of them. My mind raced. The claim was paid out, the money deposited into an account I didn't recognize. I cross-referenced it with other files, my heart sinking as the truth took shape. The Abernathys were drowning in debt, failed investments, second mortgages, loans against the estate. The insurance payout was a drop in the bucket, a desperate grab to keep their facade intact. They'd used me, my disability, to scam the system, and now they'd destroyed the cheap replacements to keep me quiet, to keep me small. I leaned back, the room spinning. The footage was still paused on my laptop, Richard's face frozen in rage. I wasn't just their daughter, I was their pawn. But pawns can move, can become queens. I saved the footage to a secure drive, my hands steady now. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning. I was going to find every secret they'd buried, and I was going to make them pay. The discovery of the insurance fraud was a splinter under my skin, sharp and festering. I couldn't sleep, my mind churning with numbers and lies. The family server was a goldmine of secrets, bank statements showing overdrawn accounts, emails about second mortgages, and cryptic notes about keeping up appearances. The Abernathys, pillars of Brookline's elite, were broke. Their grand estate, with its chipped paint and creaking floors, was a lie held together by debt and desperation. That $15,000 insurance payout for my phantom hearing aids? It wasn't even a band-aid on their financial wounds. It was a betrayal, though, and it burned. I needed answers, someone who could confirm what I'd found without tipping off my family. Mr. Davies, the university's dean of philanthropy, seemed like the safest bet. He'd known my parents for decades, always showing up at their galas with a fake smile and a checkbook. If anyone knew their secrets, it was him. I booked a meeting under the pretense of discussing a research grant, my hands sweaty as I walked into his oak-paneled office on campus. The air smelled of old books and older money. "Claire, always a pleasure," Davies said, his lips moving slowly, like he thought I was slow too. I smiled, playing the part of the grateful student, and slid a folder across his desk. "Just a hypothetical case study," I said, my voice steady. "For my ethics seminar. It's about medical insurance fraud, say, a claim for equipment never delivered." I watched his face, searching for a crack in his polished facade. His smile faltered just for a second, but it was enough. His eyes darted to the folder, then back to me. "Fascinating topic," he said, leaning back, his fingers drumming on the desk. "But you know, Claire, stirring up trouble like this, it could make things difficult. For your scholarship, for your family's reputation." His voice was smooth, but there was a warning in it, a blade wrapped in velvet. I pressed on, my heart pounding. "Hypothetically, what if the fraud was tied to a donor? Someone who pledged, say, a big sum to the university?" I was fishing, but I'd seen the email on the server. A pledge from my father for Leo's legacy admission. A pledge we couldn't afford. Davies' face hardened. "Your father's a generous man, Claire. That pledge is significant. I'd hate for anything to jeopardize it." He stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "Tread carefully. Waves have a way of drowning everyone." I left his office, my blood ice cold. It wasn't just my family. Davies was in on it, protecting their lies to secure their donation. The university, my sanctuary, was part of their web. I walked across the quad, the autumn leaves crunching under my boots, and felt the world shift. I was alone, but not helpless. The truth was my weapon, and I was going to sharpen it. The weight of Davies' warning crushed me. I sat in my dorm, staring at the blank wall, the silence louder than ever. My family's betrayal was one thing, but the university, the place I'd poured my soul into, was complicit. My scholarship, my future, dangled by a thread they could cut at any moment. I wanted to disappear, to let the silence swallow me whole. But then my phone buzzed, a text from Dr. Anya Sharma, my PhD advisor. "Meet me at the lab, now." The lab was my haven, a sleek space filled with humming machines and the promise of discovery. Anya was waiting, her dark eyes sharp with concern. "You look like hell, Claire," she signed, her hands fluid and precise. I'd always admired her. Brilliant, fierce, a woman who'd clawed her way to the top in a field that didn't want her. I broke down, the words spilling out in a rush. Leo's rage, Richard's violence, the fake hearing aids, the insurance fraud, Davies' threat. I showed her the webcam footage, my hands shaking as it played on my laptop. Anya's face darkened, her jaw tight. "They don't deserve you," she said, her voice low but fierce. "And this university? It's a machine, Claire. It chews up people like us for donors like them." She leaned forward, her eyes blazing. "But you're not alone. We're going to fight this." She didn't hesitate. She pulled out her phone and emailed a colleague at Viridian Dynamics, a biotech firm that was shaking up the industry. "Your thesis on neural interfaces, it's revolutionary," she said. "They'll want you." Within hours, Viridian responded, offering me a senior research position, complete creative control, and a $75,000 signing bonus. It was a lifeline, a chance to break free. I wired the money to a new account, my hands steady for the first time in weeks. I packed a bag, left the Abernathy estate without a word, and checked into a cheap motel near campus. The first thing I bought was a pair of state-of-the-art hearing aids, Bluetooth-enabled, AI-driven, the kind of tech I'd dreamed of designing. When I slipped them on, the world came alive, the hum of traffic, the chirp of birds, the rustle of my own breath. It was like hearing my own heartbeat for the first time. I sat on the motel bed, the city's pulse thrumming through my new aids, and made 2 calls. The first was to a litigation lawyer with a reputation for tearing down the powerful. The second was to a private investigator who didn't flinch at dirty work. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was building something that would burn their lies to the ground. I spent weeks planning, every move calculated. The PI, a grizzled man named Frank, dug into my family's finances, unearthing more than I'd expected. Offshore accounts, shady loans, even a paper trail linking Davies to their schemes. Meanwhile, Viridian fast-tracked my project. A hearing aid line called the Phoenix, affordable yet cutting-edge, designed to give people like me a voice. It was my dream, but it was also my weapon. I needed my family to feel safe, to think they'd won. So I played the part of the dutiful daughter. I had my lawyer draft a letter, formal but warm, inviting them to the Phoenix launch event. I want to honor the family that inspired me, I wrote, each word a carefully laid trap. I included a gift for each of them. Custom digital photo frames, preloaded with cherished family memories. The frames were beautiful, sleek, the kind of thing Eleanor would display proudly on her mantle. They accepted the invitation, of course, smelling a chance to bask in my success and rebuild their image. What they didn't know was the frames weren't just gifts. Frank had embedded tiny hard drives in each one, loaded with spyware. Once plugged in, they'd capture every keystroke, every panicked email, every whispered conversation in their home. I'd learned from their lies, and now I was turning their own game against them. The night before the launch, I stood in my new apartment, a small studio overlooking Boston Harbor. The city lights glittered through my window, and my new hearing aids picked up the distant hum of a foghorn. I tested the spyware feed on my laptop, watching as it synced with the frames I'd sent. A notification popped up, connection established. My family was already plugging them in, oblivious. I smiled, my heart racing with a mix of fear and exhilaration. The trap was set, but the real test was tomorrow. I was about to walk into a room full of vipers, and I had to be sharper than all of them. The auditorium buzzed with energy, a sea of faces under the bright lights. Media, investors, members of the deaf community, all gathered for the launch of the Phoenix. I stood backstage, my heart pounding in my chest, the new hearing aids amplifying every sound, the rustle of programs, the murmur of anticipation, the click of cameras. I adjusted my blazer, smoothed my hair, and took a deep breath. This was it, my moment. Not just to launch a product, but to reclaim my life. I stepped onto the stage, the spotlight warm on my face. The crowd quieted, their eyes on me. My family sat in the front row, Richard, Eleanor, and Leo, beaming for the cameras, their smiles as polished as the mahogany table at home. They thought this was their victory, a chance to ride my success back to their pedestal. I gripped the podium, my hands steady, and began. "Thank you all for being here," I said, my voice clear, amplified by the microphone and my new aids. I signed as I spoke, my hands moving fluidly in American Sign Language, a nod to the community that had embraced me when my family hadn't. The Phoenix is more than a hearing aid, it's a bridge, a voice for those who've been silenced. The crowd applauded, and I caught Dr. Anya Sharma's nod from the side, her eyes fierce with pride. I turned to my family, their smiles still fixed, oblivious to the storm coming. "My family taught me about the price of silence," I said, pausing to let the words sink in. "They taught me what it means to fight for your voice." The screen behind me flickered to life, and the webcam footage began to play, grainy but unmistakable. Leo's sneer, Eleanor's cold stare, Richard's hand ripping the hearing aids from my ears, then stomping them into pieces. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath that vibrated through the room. My family's faces froze, their smiles cracking like thin ice. I didn't stop. "This isn't just my story," I said, my voice steady despite the fire in my chest. "It's the story of lies, of betrayal, of a family that used my disability to fund their facade." The screen shifted to documents, bank statements, the insurance claim for the $15,000 hearing aids I never received, emails about their pledge to the university to secure Leo's admission. The PI's work had paid off. The spyware in the photo frames had captured everything. Panicked emails between Richard and Davies, recorded calls where they discussed covering up the fraud, even Leo's whining about how my stunt could ruin him. The crowd was silent now, the air thick with shock. I looked at my family, their faces pale, Richard's hands clenched, Eleanor's eyes darting to the exits. "You thought you could silence me," I said, my voice rising, "but you gave my voice a purpose." I gestured to the screen now showing the Abernathy Grant logo, a scholarship for deaf and hard-of-hearing STEM students, funded by Viridian, not a cent from my family. This is my legacy, not yours. The final blow came as I revealed Davy's involvement. The spyware had caught him on a call, promising to handle me if the donation came through. I nodded to the side where university investigators stood, their faces grim. 2 police officers stepped into the auditorium, their badges glinting under the lights. The crowd erupted, gasps, whispers, the click of cameras. Richard stood, his face red, but an officer was already at his side. Eleanor clutched her purse, her lips trembling. Leo just stared at the floor, his golden boy mask shattered. I stepped back from the podium, my chest heaving. The applause started slowly, then grew, a wave of sound that crashed over me. I looked out at the faces, strangers, colleagues, people like me who'd fought to be heard, and felt something I hadn't in years. Power. Not the kind my family craved, but the kind that comes from truth. I'd burned their world down, and from the ashes I'd built my own. A year later, I stood on the balcony of my Boston Harbor apartment, the city sprawling before me like a living thing. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. My Phoenix hearing aids hummed softly, catching the intricate sounds of the world. The lap of waves against the docks, the distant honk of a car, the laughter of a couple walking below. It was a symphony I'd never take for granted, not after so many years in silence. The fallout from the launch had been seismic. The Abernathys were gone, their estate sold to cover legal fees and restitution. Richard and Eleanor faced multiple felony charges: fraud, embezzlement, even assault. Leo's college dreams were dust. Last I heard, he was working odd jobs, his charm useless without the family name to prop it up. Davies was fired, his reputation in tatters, the university scrambling to distance itself from the scandal. I didn't gloat. There was no joy in their ruin, only a quiet relief that justice had been served. I'd moved on, but not without scars. The betrayal still ached, a dull pain that flared when I least expected it. But I wasn't alone anymore. Anya had become more than a mentor, a friend, a sister. Viridian had given me a platform, and the Phoenix was changing lives, its affordability making it a lifeline for people who'd never had access to quality hearing aids. The Abernathy Grant was thriving, its first recipient a 16-year-old deaf girl named Maya, an engineering prodigy with a smile that could light up a room. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a video message from Maya, her hands flying in ASL. "Claire, I got into MIT," she signed, her eyes bright. "Your grant made this possible, thank you." She paused, her smile softening. "You're my hero." I blinked back, tears, my throat tight. I signed back, "You're mine," and sent the message before setting the phone down. I closed my eyes, letting the sounds of the city wash over me, the hum of my aids, the rhythm of my breath, the pulse of a world I'd fought to rejoin. It was enough. I'd lost a family, but I'd found something bigger, a community, a purpose, a voice. The silence that once held me captive was gone, replaced by a quiet hum of my own making. It was the sound of freedom, of a future I'd built from the fragments of my past. I didn't know what came next, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid to find out. My story is proof that the people who try to keep you small are the ones most terrified of your potential. If you've ever been made to feel like you are a problem to be fixed, or a flaw to be hidden, I want you to remember this. Your voice is not an inconvenience. It is your power. Don't wait for anyone to hand you a bridge to their world. Build your own, on your own terms. Your true value is not defined by those who can't see it. Thank you for listening.